All right, welcome back to the channel. So, get an opportunity in this video to talk about two of my favorite fighters, Jermall Charlo and David Benavidez. David Benavidez clowns Jermall Charlo and says, hey, man, you backpedaling out of your talk, which says that you was going to move up and fight me. We're going to talk about that and the fact that David Benavidez really is in a tough situation, but a great situation at the same time with this little mini tournament that they have going on with, people of a certain persuasion, I'll put it that way, to try to be politically correct. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So when I first started doing these videos on this channel, I named it for non-international boxing and did a lot of videos on European fighters, did a lot of videos on Asian fighters, and then I did a lot of videos on young and up-and-coming fighters. And I can proudly say that one of the first videos are guys that I really focused on who was a very young fighter at the time that the channel started, was David Benavidez. And David Benavidez, in my opinion, has not let, as far as his talent, has not let me down at all. I still hold him in as high as a high esteem as I ever have. He's a young man that was fighting, man, just a super talent, man. You could see it in the way that he worked in the gym. You could see with the different sparring partners and the tapes that were out on him that, he's a guy that, was a very tall 168-pound fighter with just ridiculously fast hands and a lot of just natural fighting ability, right? Just a very terrific guy. He got the WBC 168-pound title, very early in his career, and then he lost it. He lost it because he had some powder in the system. And so he was stripped of the belt. He wins it back again and then again loses his belt for the second time, right? The same belt, loses it because he was overweight for a title defense, which I think was, not unexpected or, it was a tough situation. You got to make weight, but it's something that I could kind of understand because it was something that was put on in the middle of pandemic. So, I have to say that about David Benavidez that, similar to guys like Adrian Brawner, or guys like, or probably a better comparison is guys like Gervonta Davis, who, slipped a couple times when they're really early in their career. But when you see him in the ring, you know that those guys are really the real deal. And in my opinion, I think that David Benavidez might be the best guy at 168 pounds. I definitely think that he'll beat Billy Joe Saunders. I think that he'll beat Caleb Plant. And I think that there's a very good chance that he'll beat Canelo Alvarez. Unfortunately for David Benavidez, Canelo Alvarez says that he's no longer interested in fighting Mexican fighters. So you now have like a mini tournament going on, or actually Canelo's next several fights lined up, right, with the WBO champion Billy Joe Saunders, a very good fighter, slick fighter, athletic fighter, very talented, out of the UK, a fight that I think is going to be a harder fight for Canelo Alvarez than a lot of people think. I think that that Billy Joe Saunders' footwork, and if he is in really top shape and he can move and he really has his mobility, I think that it'll be a little more difficult for Canelo to walk him down than it would be against a guy that, like, I don't think is on Billy Joe Saunders' level, which is Callum Smith. Out in the UK, they have some guys that really do have a lot of talent. Two guys that I think really have a lot of talent are Josh Taylor and Billy Joe Saunders. Very skilled guys. But Canelo has that fight, and Canelo would be favored. I would favor Canelo to win that fight. But there that fight is. And then you have the fight, if Canelo beats that, the next one he's supposed to go is to Caleb Plant. Caleb Plant is I do believe the IBF 168-pound guy, who's also a PBC guy. So that leaves David Benavidez out of that circle and the ability to get his championship, to get a shot. However, that it's coming because he's a former WBC champion, and as long as he stays at that weight class, he's going to get another shot. He's going to get a mandatory shot at the 168-pound title for the WBC, provided that the WBC doesn't do something like, make a franchise title or something like that. Something that, they kind of might mix up the mix, right? But the good thing is that that he's going to, well, let me put it this way. Go back to the Jermall Charlo fight. That fight is something I believe that will happen for David Benavidez before any of the other fights happen at 168 pounds. Again, David Benavidez is just going to beat the guys. I think he's going to beat them. And definitely when you see maybe in 2 years, 3 years, that's when I think David Benavidez is really going to be controlling that 168-pound division. And I also think when he moves up to 175 pounds, I don't think that the guys like Bivol and guys like, I don't think guys like Bivol or, wow, man, Beterbiev and him would be an incredible, incredible fight, man. But that's how high I think of David Benavidez. Now, him fighting Jermall Charlo, that's a fight that I don't know which way that would go. If you looked at the fight with Andre Dirrell and David Benavidez, Andre Dirrell fought a very good fight. Like, gave Benavidez problems, was definitely landing shots on him. And I don't believe that Andre Dirrell is any more well-rounded a fighter than Jermall Charlo is. And Jermall Charlo has something that I do believe will cause David Benavidez a lot of problems. And that's that jab. He's got a real, real stiff jab. He goes up top. He goes high. He goes low with it. That right hand, that straight right hand behind it is just, man. And the thing with David Benavidez is that would be a risk for Jermall. Like if Jermall was a fighter that fights on the inside or fights at mid-range, that's when I think David Benavidez would cause him a lot of problems. Like if Jermall ever got in the situation where he couldn't keep him outside with a jab and a straight right hand, I think that is in jab to the body up, just really keeping him on the stick, keeping David Benavidez at the end of the punches. I think that Jermall Charlo can beat him like that. I don't see David Benavidez's jab really being able to flick over the top or counter that jab by Jermall Charlo. And if Jermall Charlo is shooting straight rights down low, man. Now the problem for Jermall would be, again, is if Dave Benavidez is able to cut the distance, and then they're fighting in the mid range, because then you have to deal with that tremendous that almost unreal hand speed of David Benavidez. But all in all, I like that David Benavidez is trying to push, really trying to push, and I like the fact that he's taking the Andre Dirrell rematch. I think that would be good, or he's looking for a rematch with Andre Dirrell to say, hey man, I'll knock him out, easier this time. Maybe he didn't feel like that his performance was up to par, but David Benavidez, Jermall Charlo, Gervonta Tank Davis, guys like Devin Haney, Jaron Ennis, Virgil Ortiz. I mean, then I can just go on and on with a lot of the great, really, really great American talent that's going on. What I wish is, though, that similar to what was going on with Teofimo Lopez, where, God, was it? I keep messing, but it's Snoop Dogg's organization that came in and bought those fights. I would love it if that organization had enough funding to expand what they're doing and kind of force some of these fighters to take some of these really tough matchups. Because if it's an independent organization, shoot, it can say, hey, we want to have these fights too. And if you'll fight with us, they could probably get a sanctioning body. But anyway, I'm kind of going on about that. But anyway, hey, let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.